Hey there, Empowered Tribe. It's Angela T. Moore. You are getting ready to experience the 13th episode of Empowered, a health and wellness podcast where I share my personal journey of health and healing, tips for mental and physical health, interviews with health and wellness experts and those bold enough and vulnerable enough to share their own journeys to empower you to succeed in yours. We know that life can be rewarding. It can also be challenging. It has its ups and downs, highs and lows. I learned that with a strong mind and a fit body, you are better able to grow through and grow from whatever life throws your way. My goal is to share journeys of health and wellness, as well as tips and information from extraordinary people all around the world to help you live an empowered life. My guest, Herman Moore, is my husband and also the founder and CEO of Team 84 LLC, a certified minority business holding company. A serial entrepreneur, Herman has put together a family of companies operating as a full suite of services, which include manufacturing, e-commerce, employee incentives, marketing and branding, and business intelligence platforms. In this episode, Herman and I talk about the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, but most importantly, the incredible lessons learned during his own entrepreneurial journey following his football career in the NFL. Herman also talks about how his mother's entrepreneur spirit that he observed as a young boy inspired him to not only pursue his passion, but to want to help others pursue and achieve entrepreneurial success. Even though entrepreneurs take on all the risks, as Herman shares, the rewards are immeasurable. I hope you enjoy the episode. According to Stanford EDU, at its most basic level, entrepreneurship refers to an individual or small group of partners who strike out on an original path to create a new business. And we have talked about how the entrepreneur that creates the new business bears most of the risks, but what is appealing to most, the entrepreneur enjoys most of the rewards. Herman, you describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur. Can you tell me why you describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur and why you are so passionate about entrepreneurship?
Well, to really understand my journey in entrepreneurship, a person would have to understand my past. And a lot of that has come from being son of a single parent mother, and I had one other sibling, my sister. She used to try and make ends meet. And today we call those things side hustles.
Side hustles, I like that.
But for my mom, she was just a go-getter. She did what was necessary to make sure that my sister and I had food, we had adequate clothing, and that bills were paid. They weren't always paid. She did the best she could because of her income and things of that nature. So taking on that second job taught us that there's other things you could do to make the ends meet. And a lot of that came by way of creating this other additional revenue stream. And for us, it was, selling popcorn and what they call freezer pops in the neighborhood and any and everything else that she could sell, yard sales. I mean, the whole nine, but it wasn't done in such an organized or structured way that it was considered entrepreneurship and jobs as we see today, today's entrepreneur.
Yeah, I know you and I have had many conversations about your mom's entrepreneurial spirit, and I definitely have seen that entrepreneurial spirit, I would say, really be the driving force that I think motivates you and drives you. I think you're very inspired by your mother, and I think something that you did not share, you were inspired by other people that I believe around you also had that entrepreneurial spirit. I found that people in situations when they have to make a way for themselves, they can be very creative. They can be very innovative in the way that they do that. And I think that it's important to recognize that sometimes our mentors aren't the people that we seek out in adulthood, but the people that have mentored us and guided us along the way.
Right. You're right in that there are so many principles that you have to have, and there's a discipline that you have to have. There's a resilience that you have to have, and self-motivation. to be an entrepreneur. And it's all driven by the need of something. It's driven by, there's something that needs to be filled. It could be personal. It could be that you don't like a job that you're in and you're wanting to go and do something different because you don't like the way the environment is. You don't like the way that that superior talks to you, or you don't like the way a company is run. Or quite frankly, you have an idea that you're more passionate about, that you think that you can make revenue or you can create income with to replace what you're doing. And now you're really living into your passion. And that is really what I saw. And that was really when I saw what my mother was doing, it was, she was doing it because of a necessity. But I also saw she enjoyed the rewards that came with saying, you know what, it was a self-fulfilling piece, that she was making her own money. You know, she was self-made, and that she could go out and no matter what, if she lost her job, she would still have a way to provide for her family. And I think that's what's kind of been a part of who I am.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. Now, as you know, my show Empowered gives people the opportunity to share their own journeys to empower others to succeed in their journeys. I know that your journey as an entrepreneur has had its highs and lows, its ups and downs. What would you say has been your hardest challenges, and what would you say have been your greatest accomplishments? Now, I know that's kind of a heavy question, and so let's just focus on the hardest challenges.
The hardest challenge is, from my standpoint, was the people perceive the road is going to be really easy. Being a former professional athlete, and also being someone who has, you know, what's considered celebrity status, that the doors automatically fly open for you. And it doesn't. It becomes a little bit of a hindrance. It becomes a little bit of a barrier because people see you in an unfamiliar space. They're used to seeing me play on the football field. They're used to seeing me play professional sports. But they don't realize that I'm trying to get my foot in the door into a new profession. And I'm coming there not with bravado and with all this ego as much as, hey, I'm needing support. I'm needing someone to jump in. And then couple that with the risks that come with it, as you and I know, because of, you know, obviously our relationship, that there's a risk that you don't get to take as an individual, because you have to take your family into consideration. You have to take into the effect that it has on others. So that, I would say, has been the biggest challenge, because the risk is not weighted solely by what I think, as much as can I deal with the downside as much as I can deal with the upside. And I'm saying that to you, as you know, again, this doesn't happen day one.
Of course.
Something that you grow into based on some things that you've gone through, some of the challenges that I've had. And then I would say on the flip side of that, the best part of it has been this freedom.
Yeah.
This feeling of being empowered. There's nothing that I come across that I go, I can't do that. I go, if anything, I say, hey, if I put my mind to it, if I study this, if I'm truly engaging it, I will succeed. Not I might, like I will succeed. Does that mean that I'm not going to have downturn? Does that mean I'm not going to have failure? Does that mean that I'm not going to have some uphill battles? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that I'm in control of it, but it's something that I'm doing that's in my passion.
Do you think that it's the control part that is a motivating factor for many entrepreneurs, the fact that they feel like they have control?
I think it's the motivating factor I've seen, and in talking to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we've done that. There's a self-fulfilling piece that happens, that you feel that you have control, where you feel is when you're working for someone, they have the control, and that they're determining your upward mobility, they're determining your salary, your earning potential, and all those things. But there's good and bad both with it. But that's what I've seen a lot of it, is this controlling part. And the people who say are the ones that are in their passion.
When you say passion, now there's many things that we are passionate about throughout our lives. Not everything can turn into a successful business. You know, not everything that you're passionate about can you make profitable. What would you say is, in your observing many entrepreneurs that you work with, has been the greatest, I would say, issue with going after a passion and something that you're very passionate about, but not necessarily having the patience to give your passion the opportunity to become profitable?
That's an excellent point, because I keep saying passion, passion, passion. Passion has a purpose, but it does not mean that it will be profitable. And it does not mean that it will lead you into prosperity. But what it does is sustains you.
Right.
It allows you to go into something that at least you're going to give it your all. It's something that you have a strong desire to do, which is big. If someone forces you into something that you don't really want to do, then you're not going. You need that immediate success. You won't suffer and you won't push through the hard times, which comes with being an entrepreneur. So I only simply say passion for that standpoint. Now, as you clearly stated and correctly stated, passion alone does not get it. Passion alone does not create a business. There's research, there's understanding industry and market and opportunity, understanding really how to apply and turn your passion into a business. And what does that look like from a revenue standpoint, from a profitability standpoint? And so there's so much. I mean, we can go deep with this, but there's so much that goes into determining if that passion can be turned into a business, into something that is sustainable over time.
Now, something that I've seen, which I think is a real issue for many people, especially people that leave the workforce to become entrepreneurs, is they consider themselves entrepreneurs, but really what they've done for themselves is they've created a job where they're the boss, right? You know, where they are not necessarily, well, I'll just say this, they have failed to create a business with people that are working for them based on their vision. Instead, they are doing everything themselves.
Well, I was going to say, there's this thing in business that's scale, right? They talk about scaling.
Yeah.
And we have realized now in this technological age, scaling doesn't necessarily mean you have to have people. It doesn't mean you have to have multiple locations. It means that you can scale with technology. So for instance, if I'm in e-commerce, my ability to scale, I can stay one person as long as my operations are outsourced and I have partnerships or manufacturing partners or service partners or teaming partners that can help me take on larger, workloads of work. However, understanding what does that do to your bottom line? What does that do to profitability? Then you're getting back into the person. What is your ability and your acumen to be able to decide how to make that model work from a financial perspective so that you have profitability? Sometimes people need more control. Again, it goes back to what is your control? I think control comes back to, Angela, and your level of control grows when your education grows in your business and understanding more about the business itself, more about what you can do. I've looked at your journey and I've followed you through your journey. And I look at where you started even in your work, even to where you are today. And now you're going from this single source, this single person that is doing this one thing, in fitness, to all of a sudden now you're impacting an industry and then you're impacting people beyond just being in a physical space or the virtual space.
Right.
And it's all these things that come into it. But if I ask you day one, could you do that? Now think about it. I'm still talking about one person. I'm still talking about Angela Moore.
Right.
And she scaled.
Right.
And if you scale, look at all the relationships, the partnerships, the networks, and all those things you put in place so that you can stay one person, but you could grow your channel and your revenue. Okay,
gotcha. Well explained. Now, many people have recently stepped out into entrepreneurship. According to Harvard Business Review, the COVID-19 pandemic triggered an unexpected boom in entrepreneurship as Americans opted to start businesses at record rates. Would-be entrepreneurs have proven to be undaunted by recession fears, labor and supply chain constraints, the highest inflation rates in a generation, and rapid interest rate hikes. In October 2023, over 3.5 years after the pandemic's onset, Americans were still filling 59% more applications to start new businesses than they were before the pandemic. So, couple questions here. What advice do you have for the entrepreneur that has just stepped out into entrepreneurship that is looking for direction and guidance. Let's say that they made it through the pandemic. They've inspired by seeing other entrepreneurs stepping out, and they now want to step out into entrepreneurship. What advice would you give?
I would tell them first and foremost, you got to do some research. You also have to look at your financial stability, short-term and long-term. What is going to be your financial needs? And from an infrastructure, if you're an individual that's looking to run and be the business, or are you looking to bring on more people? Is it multiple locations, one location? So there's all these factors. So there's education and understanding what type of entrepreneur do you want to be? What industry do you want to go into? And when you research that industry, what are the areas of opportunity that are emerging? What are the ones that are declining? You don't want to get into something because, again, you're passionate about it, because it's what you know, but it is one that is becoming obsolete very quickly. Especially, you look at what's happening with technology. There's so much that's transitioning that it's important that you understand the landscape. So I would say that, and then also to recognize this, entrepreneurship is very competitive. The landscape itself, the world is big. There's billions of people in it. And so we become a global economy depending on your service. Even if you're just a design house, it used to be you had to deal with someone locally to do your marketing. Now I can deal with someone overseas. I can deal with someone in another part of another state, on the other coast, if I wanted to, and have the same fluidity that I have as if someone was even sitting in my office, and sometimes even more. And a cost savings. So it is there's a recipe that determines how successful you can be. And I would say that's one other thing, Angela.
Please, take your time. Yeah, we have time.
When you're looking to do it, and you're looking to get into business, I would also encourage people to really look and say, you don't have to take, like, for instance, I don't need to conquer Michigan altogether as much as can I just conquer my county. Can I become the household name in my area, my geographical location, my territory? And then as you do that, how do I create a plan now to expand outward and expand beyond that? How do I network to get even more gain of services that are being offered in my area or my community or my neighboring counties, to where I become the choice of provider of those services? That can all of a sudden take you to where you have tremendous growth, and that gives you the ability to expand with confidence versus someone who doesn't know you, has no affiliation with your county, your state, your community, and then all of a sudden they don't have any loyalty or brand loyalty. And one final piece I would say to that is people are stepping out and becoming new entrepreneurs. You have to establish your brand. Who are you? What are you? Why are you doing what you're doing? And what is your point of difference, or at least saying, I'm just as good, if not better, than the competition?
Now, you seem to really emphasize that last part. Do you feel like that's a major mistake that people make?
I believe it is. I think a lot of people will look at it and say, I'm in this game, or I'm in this business, so I can get in it because I saw so-and-so get into it. It's not that way. I have a person who prints the same shirts. You could be a person who's printing T-shirts. I could be a person who's printing T-shirts. The cost, the style, the material, the cut, even the print work itself. Not all print is the same print. Creative, all these things. All those things are what we call points of difference. Those are the things that give you points of separation and or value in what you're doing, in a value prop to the end buyer. So, like I said, it's been a great journey for me, and you could probably tell I'm really passionate
I can
about
see
it. You and I, we talk about it all the time, and it's just really my brand ethos. It's who I am.
Now, I got another question for you. So I just asked you, what advice would you give the entrepreneur that has just stepped out into entrepreneurship, looking for direction and guidance, and you provided some very good direction and guidance. So thank you so much for that. Now, but what advice do you have for the former employee turned entrepreneur that stepped out boldly into entrepreneurship? They were passionate. They thought they had their brand, all set, ready to go. They thought they did their research. Yeah, right now they're having quite a few challenges, and they're going, maybe I should consider returning to, my workplace. What advice would you give them?
Let's break that down just a little bit.
Okay, we have time.
So, what I've run across, and I have to say, and I'll tell people I'm guilty of the same thing.
Okay.
And you've seen my crash and burn, and you're throwing water on me because I'm on fire, right? So, sometimes you can work for someone, and I think who make the best entrepreneurs are those who have worked in the system because they worked where someone had to take care of everything. You had the receptionist, you had the person cleaning your office, you had people who were making the runs and handling all these different day-to-day, even answering the administrative, responsibilities.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when you become an entrepreneur, you realize you're picking up every phone, you're answering every email, you're paying the bills, you're answering the calls, you're doing all these things. Mm-hmm. And I think there becomes a greater appreciation if those people go back into the workforce. I think you become a better employee.
I could see
when
that.
You go back because there's an understanding because you've gone through it. So there's a grace and there's a discipline, there's a responsibility and accountability that I think that gets realized that you now know why certain people make certain calls or decisions. They're not picking on you. Mm-hmm. They're not playing favoritism with other people. They're doing it because the business sometimes requires that you show this difference or you give more attention to certain people than others. But when you step out as an entrepreneur, to go back to your question, and you go into the workplace, you go into the entrepreneur space from going and say, I want to do my own thing. Some people do very well because they network while they're at work. And they understand the business. They look at sometimes a business that may be going on a downward spiral because it's slow to adapt or to adopt new technologies. Yeah. Plus, it's the old way. And it's not the new way, the more efficient way, the more profitable way. Mm-hmm. And so they see that there's a door open for opportunity, and they already have the resources, the network, the people, they understand the system. Maybe they even created the systems for that industry or that entity that isn't accepting it or listening. Mm-hmm. And it happens. We're business owners. We don't always listen to everything that every employee says because we're trying to stay true to ourselves.
Right.
But sometimes the greatest innovation and some of the greatest ideas will come from people that are in it day after day after day, that are doing that, what we call the grunt work, or doing that work that isn't celebrated, that is behind the scenes, that makes the wheel go.
Right.
And I've seen people step out of that and become highly, highly successful. So that's the beauty of entrepreneurship.
Right.
That's the beauty of it, is that if you really have that passion and you really have that in you to say, I want to make change. And I know people don't know a lot about you, but you look to change industries, you look to change lives, you look to change people.
Yeah.
You're not looking to tinker with the product.
Right.
Your tinkering is tinkering with industry. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, a lot of that is rubbed off on me to make me expand how I see things a little bit differently and to be methodical in how I do it. And I said before, it comes with risks.
Yeah.
It comes with some disappointments, but it's that getting up after it every day that makes me go, I might have got my teeth kicked in the day before.
Right.
But then I get up the next day and I go, I'm going to go out here and slide.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that you're saying to a person who may be contemplating going back to the workplace is that, yeah, you can go and you probably will be a better employee for it. But also understand that entrepreneurship is going to have its challenges. And that's not a reason to run from it, but to understand that you got to grow with those. You're going to grow with those challenges.
Absolutely. I would say look at entrepreneurship almost as you do with an investment.
Yeah.
What is my risk? What is my tolerance for risk?
Gotcha.
And there's a certain part you'll ride that stock out, or you ride that investment out, and then there's sometimes you gotta go, I gotta cut this.
Yeah.
Because the bleed and the burn is too much, and you have to go back and do something else. You transition.
I like that.
And if you do that, if you transition back to the workplace, it doesn't mean that's a stepping stone. That may make you a better person in the place of employment and give you the ability to earn that upward piece or that salary increase or make an impact in that industry, because now there's something else you picked up in that journey. So I don't tell people to run away from the journey.
Yeah.
Don't run away from those things that is tugging and pulling at you. Give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, and especially like I said earlier, because of my relationship, because of my family, and because of those things, I have to weigh my risk a little bit differently. And I have to determine, I got to have a word to say, I time out all the time, right?
Right.
Versus you have to also consider talking to other people, say, hey, can I continue?
Right.
If it's going to impact those other people, you got to bring them in. And I didn't always do that. I didn't always do that. It was like, this is my thing. And you get so passionate about it that you can crash and burn everything else around you.
Most definitely.
So those are lessons I've learned. And I speak very passionately about them.
Yeah.
So people understand that, when it's by yourself, it's by yourself. But when you're with someone else, you're still a team.
Right.
They just may be solid partners,
right,
and owners, but they're all part of them. That's the kids as well.
Yeah. Well, it actually leads nicely into, I would say, probably my final question, and we have probably about 8 minutes, so you have time to expand. Something that we definitely have to recognize is that we cannot change the past. We cannot undo what has been done. But I think a lot can be learned when we take a moment to reflect on our past decisions and actions and think about what we have learned and how we can use it to move ourselves powerfully forward. Looking back, what would you do differently knowing what you know now?
One thing I would do is, again, I would stop, I would educate, and I would take and give myself a real good year, 2 years. And then some people say you got to strike one iron side. It's not going anywhere. The world constantly changes. Opportunities, if you're in it, you're not going to miss out. Don't have that fear of missing out mentality.
Yeah.
You do something that is irrational, or you do something that's too impulsive, because it takes a lot to undo the damage sometimes if you make really, really bad mistakes like that. But education is big. Learning what it means to be an entrepreneur, learning what are some of the basic foundational things that you need that are necessary in your line or your field or your industry, that will get you off to a great start foundationally, so that you can build from then on up. And once you do that, you're grabbing pieces along the way. The other thing I would say is not to risk too much early. Making sure it's something you truly want to do before you go all in.
Gotcha.
You don't have to sit at the table and say, I'm putting it all on black or putting it all on red, right?
Right.
You can go in and just say, you know what, the minimum bet here is $5. I'm gonna go $5, and I'll see what happens and play that for a little while. And then the final piece I would say is if you are in a partnership and you have a relationship with a significant person that could potentially be affected by decisions that you make, stay connected. Bring them in and make them a part of the decisions that you make. Doesn't mean they're giving you decisions on the business itself,
right?
But they're understanding the risks that are involved, or maybe they may understand your blind spot better than you do. And who's going to do it more than a person that has something at stake, more than just money on the line with you. And if I had to go back and do it over, I would not make one single decision without coming back and consulting with you or consulting with someone and saying, listen, here's the decision I'm about to make. What do you think? And making that almost a unanimous piece that has to happen. Like, we have to consent. We have to agree.
Yeah. Any goals that you have right now that you would like to share?
Right now is just to continue to enjoy the blessings that I have, and the ability to go out and be an entrepreneur, because that in itself is a blessing.
Most definitely.
It means you have a liberation, you have a freedom that are granted to very few to be able to do it and stay within their passion, and be able to transition and move. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the relationships that I've had along the way, and it keeps me motivated, because is for all the people that are trying to keep us, and in the business, understand this, people are going to try and make sure you don't succeed. It's just the nature of the business. It's the nature of the world.
Yeah, unfortunately, right?
Unfortunately, but don't let that be a deterrent. Don't let that discourage you. If anything, lean inward on the relationships that feed into you, that pour into you, and get rid of those that negate and take away. It's not worth the time, the energy, or the effort.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, other than that, just saying that I know this is your show, but to make sure I let you know, I'm extremely proud of the accomplishments that you've made. A lot of people may not know you. They don't know of your journey and everything that you've gone through. They can see and read and hear all the things on social media. but understanding when you peel back the layers, the depth of being a person who has a master's in business management, having master trainers certification, being a nutrition enhancement specialist, corrective exercise specialist, and on and on, masters in
counseling. Yeah.
And there's that in itself is like the entrepreneurial journey.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It's educating yourself. It's doing all the foundational stuff first. No one's watching. No one's paying you. It's costing you money. And I will say this, along the way, you've always gone to the other person and said, are you in it with me?
Mm-hmm.
And you've done that thing I said entrepreneurs should do when you're in it with someone else. Say, hey, do I have your support?
Yeah.
And to you are a person who epitomizes that. And again, not to continue to toot your horn a little bit, but that you are everything that you do and you say on your show is true. Mm-hmm. And you embody that every day. And I just want to tell you, I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
Keep up. Wish you continued success.
Yeah.
And that you've been a personal inspiration for a lot of my growth and a lot of my journey as well.
Yeah. Well, you are my inspiration as well.
I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day to, it's one thing to be my husband, it's another thing to do an interview. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for listening to Empower It with Angela T. Moore. Feel free to share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it. New episodes come out weekly. Follow our show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening right now.